Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to unmute now.
I'm here just in case, John Leon Gonzalez.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, at least we're here.
This done?
Liquid sunshine, my friend.
How does this sound? Can people hear me? Please type in if you can hear this.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. So we were having difficulties with the larger machine. We're going to try this on a little laptop. So let us know at any time if you can't hear or if there's a problem.
Okay.
So we'll turn it over. Turn it over to Connor.
Yep. All right. Thank you all. Sorry to have a little technical difficulty there, but it's kind of exciting for us to try out a new technology. It will be really, obviously, we've had a few hiccups, but it'd be exciting to see if this works overall, because this sure seems like an efficient way to communicate with all of you in the long run. So Don and I are here in a meeting room, and Angela Spencer is going to be in and out, and we may have a couple of private inspectors join us, but they haven't shown up yet. So thank you for everybody who's online. Again, this is Jeff Talent. We'll back up the slide. So we're here to talk about the RRIO checklist today. We kept this audience mostly limited to private inspectors. We may have a couple of other stakeholders that we're interested in getting an update who are online also. So I had the screen up where you were getting settled in, but if you think about this here, please keep your microphones muted if you will. It helps us manage the dialogue and not get feedback on the system here. Easiest for us if you type your comments or questions and don't have a keen eye on the comment section there. And we just saw a note to get closer to the microphone, so I'm doing that. Angela's going to turn up the volume for me. Okay, we'll see if that helps. If we do have some other technical difficulties along the way, please type the comments in if you can. But there's probably not a lot we can do about it on the fly. So if things don't work out exactly, we will come back with either written communications, or you can always give Don a call. And again, this is our first time doing this, so please bear with us as we try and make it work. So moving into the checklist. Oh, wrong direction. What we're here to talk about, there's really very new from what most of you have seen in earlier discussions, but this is now the official version of the checklist, so we wanted to offer one more chance to go through the changes. The checklist went through a director's rule process. To remind you what that is, we did the stakeholder work and the work with all of you on drafting the changes, and then to make those changes official, we go through what's called a director's rule. It's a formal process. It goes out for a 30-day public comment period. It also gives 30 days for the council to weigh in if they have any changes. And then we got through that process in early November, so the language in the checklist is now finalized. All right, so a few general changes that have come up in the checklist. You'll see on that front page where there's a bunch of language and instructions, the first general change is we've clarified a few items that are not grandfathered. So again, most items in the RRIO checklist are grandfathered. So if the house was built to the standards at the time, we would grandfather it in. But there's a few essential life, health, safety items which are not grandfathered. So those are handrails, smoke detectors, CO alarms, which have just been added to the checklist, deadbolts. So if a house does not have those, and even if it wasn't built with them, they need to be installed. We define the word unsafe in that front section. And then you'll see throughout the checklist, we've added the words otherwise unsafe at several points. And that's to give you some more discretion if you see something that's bugging you, but the way the checklist item is written doesn't exactly get you there. You can often use otherwise unsafe. We've done some reformatting in the checklist. You'll see when, as you go through that there's, for instance, a new section for multifamily properties for items that are unique to those properties, like exit placards and corridor doors. And then we've done a bunch of cleanup and clarification. You see the underlined strikeout version we sent out to all of you. There's lots and lots of cleanup and clarification. So our plan is to not go through each one of those changed items, but instead just hit the key changes, the ones that are more substantive than just cleanup or clarification. And then when we're done, if you all have an electronic copy of the checklist, if you want to come back and talk about other ones, that would be fine also. All right, well, let's move right in to the changes. So first one, section 1.5, we added window latches. I think this is a suggestion that came from private inspectors when we asked the question, What are you walking past that's kind of bugging you? And unsecure first floor windows was one of those. The second one we added was guardrails on interior platforms. So previously, if you had like a loft area or an interior platform on stairs, it didn't require guardrails. The next one, this has been a biggie, and we've had a lot of questions about it, so we might kind of pause on this for a moment. We added lead paint. So the way the checklist item reads, it's if you observe peeling paint over 2 square feet or on a wall surface, or peeling paint on a component like a door or window frame that exceeds 10% of the component, and the property is older than 1978, thank you, Don, then you would call it out for the paint to be repaired. So your job is to observe the peeling paint and measure it and call it out to the property owner. And then their job is to secure a lead-safe certified contractor to do the work. And I mean, a lot of people have been concerned about testing or full lead abatement or anything like that, and that is not what's required here. Usually it's just going to be a contractor who's using lead-safe practices to, prepare the surfaces for repainting and then repaint them and re-encapsulate the potential lead paint containing paint. So it shouldn't be terribly burdensome. I think the most challenging thing for property owners will be they have to use a lead-safe certified contractor instead of doing it themselves or hiring somebody they know down the street who may not be certified. And I appreciate that's a little bit of a burden, but it is state law. They shouldn't be doing their own work anyway if it's potential lead-containing paint. So we're just mirroring state law. And there's plenty of lead-safe certified contractors around that can perform the work. Maybe we'll pause there a moment if you want to type in questions about that, or we've got the audio on, so I guess we have a small enough group. If you want to chime in with the question, we'll try and make that work.
Is it 1972 or 1978? I thought the EPA was 1972. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? How's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
Yeah. I'll make it easier for all of you had a copy of that Word copy. We sent the Word copy when to the webinar. And if you look at the checklist, it's more specific, of course, than what we have on our screen. What we have on our screen is just bullet, for discussion purposes. And another thing too is that there's a major training session coming up in January where you'll actually get processes and procedures that we foresee. We're internally working on that, and this webinar was mainly designed to make you aware of these changes, and frankly a bunch of questions that could come out of it. And as Jeff already mentioned, contact me, and we'll be addressing those in a hands-on training session in January. So, is there any other questions or input on lead?
Great, thank you.
All right. Okay, we got a question about the addition of guardrails. So the answer on do guardrails need to meet current standards, the answer is no. Guardrails need to be present, but you can go to the standards of the day for like gap between balusters. We don't want to come in and reconfigure old stairways if they had 6-inch spacing between the balusters instead of 4-inch spacing. But you do need to make sure there are guardrails there.
if someone's talking, we can't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, now you hear you
Yeah.
perfectly.
So we have to speak directly to this thing, I guess. Thank you.
And I think the other thing is,
As soon as you guys move your head away from the microphone, we lose you.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, we're talking into a laptop because we have technical difficulties here with our webinar, our big webinar screen. So that's probably what part of the problem is.
Got it.
You have. Hold on one second here. I'm going to turn. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll just hand it to you, Jeff, if we're talking. The first question back here, the addition of guardrails and handrails. That was John Laswell. Did we give you a background on that, John? Are we done with that one? Okay, I'm not hearing from John. How about Leon Gonzalez? It said, should this include non-living basements? And if it's habitable space, that's the key. And habitable space is identified in the blue book we gave you, which is the housing code. And if it's habitable space, a handrail is required, as well as a guard. And the key is habitable space. Does that answer your, and presumably that answers the question, John. If not, go ahead and type more in. The next question we had was from KO Inspections, and what about rail going to the street, public sidewalk? Yes, this actually begins tomorrow. And tomorrow, the city, as well as you folks, will begin requiring handrails to the sidewalk or the public way. And just to recap, there's a period of time here in the past 4 or 5 months where RRIO was not doing that, but the housing inspectors are. But we've gone through this thing legally and whatnot, and now we're both going to be in the same requirement, and that is handrails to the sidewalks, the public ways.
all right, well, this is Jeff again. I'm going to move on to the next screen here. So
I had a question.
oh, okay.
I typed it in, but somehow you didn't get it. Are we to believe that handrails are required on platforms between stair runs?
Continuous.
That's a toughie. And again, we're going to go into this formally in training because we have what they call the landscape staircases. We have exceptions for that. We also have exceptions, common sense exceptions, and that's very hard to train to for your very question. And if we look at the history of the codes, it really relates to can the people in the building, the occupant load of the building, can they get out and be safe? And if there's a lot of these homes, you come out on the front porch, you go down the staircase, and within 5-6 feet, there's another staircase to the sidewalk. There is no area of refuge for those people escaping that home. So that's an example of where you take that handrail all the way down because presumably they're going to be exiting to the public way. Let's say, for the sake of discussion, that it's 20 feet between these things. You're not going to require a rail on that 20-foot flat sidewalk or sloping sidewalk, but then when it goes down to the public way, you would. Does that help you?
Yeah, what about interior stairways?
Interior stairways are interior stairways, and that hasn't changed in 100 years. And what we're talking about is this anomaly of the Seattle existing building code, where the construction codes do not require this thing to the public way for our uses. But interior is interior. Nothing's changed there.
Well, no, but I meant the platform between stair runs. You're coming down a stairway, there's a platform, it turns and goes down. Does the handrail have to be continuous through that platform onto the stairway, or can there, I mean, that doesn't make sense to me, I guess.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, and here again, we're beyond the scope of this, but just shortly, we'll talk more about this because there's so many various in the big training session. But to answer your question, if it's an existing handrail, right, then and one isn't there on the landing, let's say, there is no handrail there. But if there's a guardrail, you don't worry about it, okay? But if it's a new requirement, there's nothing's there and there's new requirement, you come up to current code. That help you?
Yes, yes on guardrails on platforms, handrails on platforms, not necessarily so.
Because I'm talking about a wall. You got a wall there. There's a corner and there's a wall. So there's no guardrail there. It's just a transition platform to the next run.
Yeah,
That's what,
yeah, but I think that we need to get to a drawing board and a more in-depth, this, I'm gonna have
okay.
a lot of slides and a lot of pictures. I'm not having a visualization of exactly what you're asking. So
Okay.
we're,
All right.
okay?
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so next one is asbestos. So we added this as an advisory only. So this is and this is one we heard from either some private inspector or some of our inspector feedback. Just a few situations where they'd walked past damaged steam pipes or something like that, or heating ducts that they were worried had asbestos on them, but they had no way to call it out. So they just made it advisory comments. So we've added this as now a formal item on the checklist. So if you see some materials that are potentially asbestos containing and appear to be damaged, you should call it out. It's not a failure. It's just a way of making sure you bring it to the attention of the property owner. And we're not judging whether it's asbestos or not. It's just, hey, I'm a little concerned about what I saw there. I want to bring your attention to it. That's really how you use this. The next item, entry doors, we added, kind of broke apart some of the requirements for entry doors and added a couple things, most notably observation port or windows adjacent to the entry door so you can see who's coming to the property. Next up, we added smoke detectors. We didn't add smoke detectors. We added them using the current standards, which is in each sleeping room, outside of the sleeping area, and on each level of the house. That's been in fire codes, but not in our city codes until now. And then we added CO alarms. Again, that was added to state law, but the city hadn't caught up with it. So now we've caught up with that. I think it's for those, it's installation outside of the sleeping area and on each floor of the home. We get a lot of questions about where exactly they should be mounted, but that's really just a manufacturer's instructions. We're not going to go too far into that. Mainly, you just need to see that it's there, unless it's clearly mounted improperly or in a wrong location.
Just a little bit of comments on the two of these, the smoke detector and CO. The RRIO requirements are much less than new construction requirements, and you guys just need to be aware of that. We did not want to be any different than the fire department, because the fire department, the fire marshal's office, is out there checking existing buildings the same as we are. And the potential was, of course, to have different answers, right? And it's very easy to, slip over to new construction requirements. So there, and again, in your checklist, we make it real clear there, or we hope we make it real clear exactly where these things are required. If not, we will, again, I have a lot of documentation on this issue, and we'll go into it in depth in the January technical meeting. So hopefully that addresses the smoke and CO alarm issues. Yeah, on key changes, back to John.
All right, so key changes, again, 3.4. I mentioned this earlier, a new section for multi-unit properties. So you can skip past this section if you're in a single unit property. But in the multi-unit properties, we added a few things. The building entrance door, so that's the front, door of an apartment building. Stairway enclosure doors in the hallways and corridors, and exit signage. And on both of these, the checklist has this notion of a walking path. So we're not asking you to check every door. This would be really burdensome in very large buildings. You'd get good exercise going up and down the stairs. What we're asking you to do is look for these items on your walking path. So you choose a path that's sort of the logical flow to get to the units that were selected for RRIO inspection. And as you follow that path, you look for exit signage and stairway enclosure doors that are operating, and you just call those ones out. Kind of like doing a random sample of units. This is a random sample of exit signs and corridor doors. We'd already had holes in walls to some extent, but for these multi-unit buildings, we called out fire-resistive walls and ceilings and any compromise in them, just because that's particularly important for fire safety in these buildings. And then we added storage and maintenance rooms to make sure that those have latching doors and they're openable from the inside, so nobody can, approach tenants that might be in those rooms, hide out in them and attack them or something like that. Next item is 6.5. It's improper use of extension cords in place of permanently installed wiring. This was some kind of tough language to write. We think we got it there. The point is to call out situations where there's like wiring, extension cords stapled to the baseboard, running power to another room. The point is not to call out a tenant that's getting power to their lamp, to get it over behind the couch or something like that. So there's going to be a little bit of a judgment call and, good analysis that goes into this, but we mainly don't want to see scenarios where property owners have installed that wiring using zip cord or lamp cord to avoid actually putting in properly installed wiring. An earlier version of this talked about in the walls. We actually broadened that as a result of some stakeholder comments so that it allows you to call it outside also. We broadened that after we found a bunch of wiring under a deck using lamp cord. Pressure temperature relief valves on hot water heaters, that's pretty straightforward. I think we had some questions about, well, what about the, what do you call them, Don, the pipes that come off of those, the discharge pipes or the blow-off pipe. We're not too wrapped up in configuration of those pipes. It's probably worth at least making an advisory comment if you see a particularly poor configuration. 9.1 is another important one, and one you didn't see before that came as a result of our comment period and our own internal review. Before the RRIO checklist, it implied you must have a cooking appliance. Well, actually, in city code, you don't have to have a cooking appliance. A property owner can rent a unit without the cooking appliance and make it the tenant's responsibility to provide it. So we've changed this now to be clear that you have to have a cooking appliance or the capacity to install a cooking appliance. So typically you look for the space and the wiring or the gas plumbing to support cooking appliance. And then the final one on pest infestations. Based on some stakeholder comments, we made it a requirement to have at least one treatment completed before we sign off on it. Our checklist was kind of silent on this before. The practice had been we would accept, if you observed pests, you can't necessarily make sure they're gone. You'd have to hold your inspection open for quite a while. So we previously required that a property owner just get a certified pest maintenance program in place. Now we want to make sure that at least one treatment has occurred before you sign off on it. The other option is if the certified professional says, well, no, the program I have in place is appropriate, and they're willing to sign off on that, that would be okay also. We recognize that sometimes it's very hard to get rid of pests or tenants aren't cooperating. Yeah, so those are the major substantive changes. The other thing we wanted to check in on are these leave behinds. We've mentioned these before. This came out of the City Council a few months ago, it was very important to them that tenants had a way to learn if their unit had passed or failed, what items were called out, and a way to get feedback to the city if they were concerned about how the inspection went. So it's from starting now, it's going to be a requirement to leave these behind in the units which you inspect. We tried to make this as manageable as possible, so it's a standard size sheet of paper. It's double-sided. We'll provide you with a PDF, and we'll have one on our website so you can print it out yourself. I think I heard from a couple of people that they might be challenged with double-sided printing. We can at least help you get some copies to get you started. Not a big deal for us to run them off also. But the idea is you print these out, you bring these along. If there's some failures in the unit, you make a short note at the top in the grayed out box on what items you found. I guess there's a possibility that you could find a lot of items and that box isn't big enough. So, use good judgment in that case, have an extra scrap of paper or something and say, see attached. And then the tenants will send these in to us and we'll collect the data and it becomes our job to deal with them after that information comes in. So I think that we kind of blew through that pretty quickly. We're happy to try and have some discussion, either typed questions or just through the microphones here, because that actually seems to be working okay. If you have questions on other items on the checklist or want to circle back to any of these. Otherwise, Don is happy to deal with individual scenarios and answer questions one-on-one. And then, like Don said, we're working on a bit more of a comprehensive kind of guidance manual and training. And Don kept saying January. I'm a little worried about aiming for January right at this moment because that's a big job. But we will have more coming your way.
It's kind of hard to hear you, but when will these be in place as far as when we need to use these
new
standards?
Them as of tomorrow. Oh, and we'll email out to you a fillable PDF form just like we had for the old checklist. We just got that finished yesterday, Friday late.
Jeff, are you taking questions at this point?
Yes.
I had a question back on 3.1 in the introductory statement there. It said that every sleeping room should have an emergency escape window between August 10th, 1972, at least on my copy. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, it should say, shouldn't it say after August 10th?
Let me double check. Great point. I have a checklist. What are you talking about? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Don, now.
Okay. Where are you in 3.1? The gray area? Is that what you're reading?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now.
All right. What your question again? I'm looking at the typing, and what was it again that you asked about? It sounds like a typo.
Yeah, every sleeping room below the fourth floor built or permitted between August 10th, 1972 doesn't make any sense. And I think that should read after.
I'm looking for that line. Oh, right here. Or a floor built or permitted between August and must have emergency escape or
Yeah.
after 2004. Well, the reason for that was after 2004.
No. After 1972.
Yes, you must have the escapement window. Okay. The reason we put.
It says between.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. That's a typo. And
Okay.
We'll fix that. I got you. The word between is what were you concerned with? Got it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that correction. We'll change that. And
Okay.
everything else makes sense to you?
Yep.
Oh, that's good. All right, good, yeah, good correction. And by the way, if any of you after this webinar come up with something like that, where you think you can read better, please email me. And because we do have a short minute here where we can make some of those type of corrections before we print this baby and really go for the gusto on it. I mean, we'll be starting, you know what I mean, we'll be starting enforcing it tomorrow as well. But if there's just like that, if there's a word that makes it better to read, by all means, call it to my attention. So other than that, how's everybody going? I guess we're still hearing. Sorry for this difficulty we're having here, but we'll get up to speed on this. But what's the general consensus of this webinar methodology as opposed to getting you all in here once or twice a year? Any input?
Well, I think it's a great idea, except for the fact that it was a good portion of it was broken up.
Yeah, and we'll get under control with that. This is the first time Jeff or I have done this, and we're sitting in front of the biggest TV screen you ever seen in your life, and the darn thing has too much magic in it. You know what I'm saying? But we'll get a handle on it, and I mean, maybe this technical thing that we're doing, maybe we'll try it again. And if you can see the slides and whatnot I have, but we can talk about it. What's the difference between this and being down here at City Hall? You know.
True.
All right. Other.
I really like this platform. I think it was great, and it saved a ton of time for all of us. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, glad to hear that. Other questions or comments?
So these are effective immediately, is that correct?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I think I put an effective date of tomorrow on there, so we wouldn't make it the same day we talk to you. But.
Okay.
Jeff, when are we going to be getting a fillable PDF of the new checklist?
We'll get that out to you right after this.
Fantastic.
It might not have that typo you caught corrected. All right, well, I'm not hearing anything more. Again, Don will be back at his desk after this if you have some kind of immediate burning questions or very specific ones. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we appreciate the work along the way over the last year and a half to make these changes to the checklist. The city process moves kind of slowly, but we did get there. So thanks again, and we will, like Don said, be following up with a more comprehensive training, both for new inspectors and sort of a refresher for anybody out there among you that wants to get caught up on newer guidance. And we expect to have some written guidance that accompanies that. Thanks again, and we'll sign off from our end.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.